I keep seeing evidence that stories matter, and I keep seeing absolutely no evidence that stories don't matter. I keep seeing people, real people, self-report about themselves that Mushoku Tensei had a general positive effect on their life. How is that possible? I mean, really, how is that possible? Because you can watch someone, like a real person, who's way better than you at everything. You can watch them and dismiss everything that they've said. But somehow you can watch Rudy, who's you probably view Rudy as way worse than you. In terms of his starting point, he's probably way worse than you. And you can watch him and hear his ideas, and somehow they incept themselves into the back of your brain and can actually change your behavior. For some people, for some people, that's not going to happen. You're just not going to have the association with Rudy, or the lessons he's learning are things you've already learned and already know, and so they seem obvious. But to the people to whom this matters, Rudy's lessons are revelatory. The things that Rudy comes to, the conclusions that he draws, and therefore the ones that you draw while watching him, are conclusions that some people could never have reached on their own, or might have taken 2 decades to reach on their own. By that time they might be 40 and a NEET and not have figured it out. So there's something valuable in watching somebody else figure it out, because if it lets you figure it out 20 years early, you don't waste 20 fucking years. So if I can help you figure out what I just saw in Mushoku Tensei, what is actually there, what is fundamental, and why it matters, why it speaks to you in the way that, like, the Hercules myth speaks to people and has spoken to people for thousands of years, or the myth of Perseus going and getting fire, or is it Perseus? I forget. Going and getting fire and then being tortured for it for eternity, or how about the religious myth of you might hate me for saying this, how about the religious mythology of Jesus Christ, who is the best in every way, utterly self-sacrificing, and is then punished in the worst way for it? Well, how does that make sense? I don't know, but it does make sense to people, and it does cause change, good and bad. Millions of people have died for Christian ideals, in good ways and bad ways. There have been crusades and horrible acts of violence and vengeance. There have also been functional societies built upon some of the bases of those ideals. Some of them. There's give and take here, but these mythological stories, believing that they don't have an impact on you or that they are just entertainment, is foolhardy. It is foolhardy, and it makes you manipulable. If you don't actively know that the stories you're watching are changing you every time you watch them, then you are capable of consuming and shitting out garbage. And you will do that continuously and unawarely, without any awareness. You will shit more garbage out into the world, and it is the last fucking thing we need, because the world is fucking choking with literal garbage. Emotional, intellectual, physical, and plastic. Garbage everywhere. We don't need you to be creating more of it. So we need you to be thinking properly, not consuming garbage. Or, when you consume garbage, know enough to puke it back up. But the important thing, I'm not going to be able to judge for you what is and is not garbage. I'll do my best. It's part of my goal. But I'm not going to be able to judge that for you. You have to judge for yourself, which means you need your own sort of truth. But in order to get there, you need to know that something is worth judging. That media matters, that what you watch is important, that the stories you consume affect you. Fundamentally, they change the way you see the world. And if you change the way you see the world, you change your behavior. Your behavior is different when you have a blindfold on than when you don't have a blindfold on. Always, because you can see. So let's get you seeing. Okay, not that I would claim to be able to see. I feel more blind than ever. The more I feel like I can see, the more I feel like I am blind. The more you know, the more you realize that you know nothing. I'm not trying to be arrogant here. I'm trying to be helpful. Okay? I love you. Okay, great. Let's go through the fundamental beginnings of Mushoku Tensei. That is wrong. We discover the landscape sexually of this world. Paul is our male role model, the only one we have. And to many extents, he's a better role model than what Rudy was looking at in the previous world. I mean, he's at least, he's not a NEET. He has a job. He's working. He has a sword and he knows how to wield it. He has respect from his wife and from the rest of the opposite gender. He's doing something right. He's viewed as sexy. He's an attractive mate. He's a functioning part of society. But he's also a flawed human with rapacious desires who has, in the past, been unable to control them. and even in the present finds himself sometimes unable to control them because he's human. Like a parent, like a real father. Like the way that a relationship with a real father should be, which is not to view them as some god on high. It is to view them as a person who might know more than you do on a lot of things and is definitely stronger than you are and can definitely beat you down and can definitely make unfair seeming determinations about your future, like bonking you on the head and throwing you into a cart with Ghislaine. Fathers can do that. Your dad can send you to military school and you can't do anything about it. This is true. This is the way it is, at least in America. This is the way it is. Your father could also teach you a bunch of moral lessons, and then you could find out that he raped a woman when he was young. Or you could be like me and have a father who taught you or tried to teach you that porn is wrong and rotting your mind. And then you go into his room and you find a big stash of porn DVDs. And suddenly there's a hypocritical contradiction there. That seems right. That seems correct. If your eyes are open, your father is both somebody to respect and somebody to be careful of, because they're not perfect. You're going to view them as perfect for a while, and then you're going to find out it ain't true. That's going to be pretty interesting when it happens. Let's take a step back. I want to say something else that I think is really important. And it's going to hurt to accept this thing, but it is true. And if you come at arguing this one, you need to spend some real time thinking about it before you argue it, because I don't think it's false. I think it's really true. Really, really true. Most of the people watching this video are male. Not all of them, but most of them. Hello, lads, boys, guys. I want to say something to you. You, my friend, my ally. You are capable of rape. You could rape a person. You could. You are capable of it. I mean, really put yourself in the perspective. Put yourself in the point of view. This is going to hurt. Close your eyes and imagine yourself doing it. Imagine what it would take for you to do it. Imagine how desperate you would have to be. Because I know that every guy here has masturbated to something and then felt guilty about it afterward. Every single one of you has done that, right? Your sexual desire has been so great that you did something you regretted later. Why? Because for most men, the craving for sex is as strong in some ways and as biologically defined as the craving for food. It's not, but it feels like a need. So, if you were put in a position where you were told day in and day out that sex is all that matters, that your only judgment, the only thing that judges you worthy is whether you are fucking lots of bitches. And you, for 30 years, have not ever fucked a bitch. But the society tells you that you are meaningless unless you do. Unless you do. Do you see how your self-worth, your very viewpoint on yourself in the world, might start getting wrapped around sex? And how you might become willing to sacrifice the well-being of someone else for your own well-being? In the same way that people callously defeat others in competition, economically, socially, sexually, all the time. Because when you date a girl and you know there are other guys who want her, you are hurting all of them, and you have to deal with that. When you get a job and you know there are other people aiming for that job, you have to hurt all of them for your own desires. How much of a stretch is it to hurt one person to fulfill your own animal satisfaction? The answer is it is not that much of a stretch. The answer is you are capable of it. And if you cannot admit to that to yourself, you are far more dangerous than you believe. Because you think you are good, and you are not good until you recognize your capacity for evil. Until you realize that the temptation to assault, to fuck, can be carried out. Until you realize that it's possible, you are not in control of it. Virtue is never the absence of desire. Virtue is not the absence of desire. Let me say this again. Virtue is not the absence of desire. It is the ability to control. It is the presence of desire and the ability to control oneself. There would be no virtue in me quitting nicotine if I were never addicted to nicotine. There would be no virtue to me sitting here with this in my hand with 0 milligrams in it if it did not physically hurt me. I am in physical pain right now. My whole back and neck is a mess of tightness and cramps right now as I'm speaking to you because there is no nicotine in my system, and it hurts me. It is virtuous that I am doing it anyway. I'm not trying to virtue signal here, but it is virtuous that I am doing it anyway because I crave it and I am saying no. You are the same. If you are any sort of hot-blooded male, I know there are exceptions. There are ace people. There are lots of people. If you are any sort of hot-blooded male, you crave sex, and you are in a constant war to act correctly in relation to your craving to your craving for sexuality. Correct? Tell me that I'm wrong. That you're not in a constant struggle to keep from staring at that girl's ass when you see a hot girl. Because you know it's not right, and you know you'd be objectifying her, but your animal brain goes, big ass and titties! Every time. Every time. So, the virtue is controlling yourself. Not having the desire. What is this scene? This is Rudy as not having the virtue either. I think if you go and you masturbate to nothing but loli porn for a couple of weeks, your outlook on life will change. Then go and masturbate to nothing but MILF porn for a couple of weeks and see if your outlook on life changes. And then go and masturbate to no porn for a couple of weeks and see how your life changes. Because that's what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, and my perspective on women is different. My perspective on women is different. It's almost like how you act shapes how you will act in the future. Or maybe how you behave changes your perceptions. It's almost like that's true, and I think it is. And so when you show that to a real person who's watching it, they might go through the same experience of fantasizing a little bit about Eris. Because, probably, let me be real with you, if you're a male right now, I think your brain is conditioned to sexualize a woman. If a female character comes up on screen, your brain is, and this is fundamentally, like at a base level, if you see a woman 100 yards away in the forest, you're going to immediately scan what you see and determine whether that's a potential mate. And how good a mate. Immediately. Instantly. Because of course you would. Hey, back at it with another little insert thought. So the gym is kind of my forest. It's sort of my explored space, and it's the place where I watch other people socialize and do their thing. But it's also where I get to see most other people. You know, I don't go shopping. I don't go to the mall. I don't go to the movies. I don't have any reason to. And I think that anybody who's, like, super connected in the modern world doesn't really have a reason to, like, go outside and walk around other than to walk and enjoy nature and be and experience and exercise, which is part of why I go to the gym. And I usually go to the gym outside. And what's cool about being at the gym outside is that there's a pretty large space. There's a full field, and there are usually people working out on it and doing various things, or playing soccer, or like running around, or some kids throwing a football around, or whatever. So there's like different social groups interacting. There are people doing things all over. There's a basketball court on the other side that's kind of further away, and it makes the whole space feel much larger. And there are sort of walls and trees of like the jungle gym things and the machines and the equipment, and there's stuff that everybody wants. There are resources there in terms of the equipment that's being used, and there has to be some kind of social interaction in order to manage and negotiate the sharing of resources. You know, if there's only one bench and two different people who don't know each other want to bench at the same time, then something's going to happen. One of them is going to sit there and look anxious, or they're going to go up to them and ask to work in, or something's going to happen with that interaction, or it could end up in conflict, but generally it doesn't. And that's pretty fascinating that a bunch of people, often men, hyped out on pre-workout and testosterone, because let's be honest, there are a lot of people at the gym who are not natural, but also natural testosterone, angry men listening to metal music on their headphones and like, rawr, and yet they are like, hi, how's it going? Yes, can I use this piece of equipment that's sort of near you? I don't want to fuck with your shit. And everybody's really careful about their like personal bubbles and not encroaching on other people's bubbles. Anyway, so that's my forest. So when I say this thing about when you see a woman from 100 yards away, that's because it happens to me. I'll be walking, to go grab a weight or something, And on the far side of the gym, there's the one entrance point where people walk in from where they've like scanned in inside, and you have to like walk around a little thing and walk past the pool and walk down this pretty long hallway in order to get to the outside gym equipment. You gotta walk past the whole field. And as I'm walking, my brain is immediately looking up anytime that there's movement toward the entrance of the location. Partly as like a, who's that? What's there? Is that an enemy? Is there a struggle? Is that somebody that I know? And that's what starts to kick in, is that somebody that I know? And is it a girl? Every fucking time my brain is going, girl? Is it a girl? Could there be a mate over there? And then if it's a girl, from like 100 yards away, I have pretty darn good vision. I've got better than 20/20 vision. It's hard to test how much better, but I think the last time that I tested, it was like 10/20 or 20/10, whichever way that goes. I think 10/20, I don't remember. But I've got really good eagle eye vision. But from 100 yards away, first off, I can tell that that's a woman immediately. Immediately, no matter how she's dressed, no matter whether she has her hair up or a hat on or whatever, immediately something in my brain goes, that's a female. And then the next thing is potential mate. And only when they get quite a bit closer is there any even ability to determine the age of that person. And this has been kind of a shocking experience a couple of times, because I will see a girl from 100 yards away and go, damn. And then she will walk up closer and I'll go, oh shit, she's like 15. So what's going on there? Now, the girl who that's happening to, I'm not tracking what I can actually see. I'm tracking like markers. I'm tracking like sports bra and short shorts, right? General shape, long hair, like simple things, tall. I'm seeing all of those things, but I literally can't even tell within like 20 years of certainty how old that person is. I'll see, there are a couple of women at the gym who I'll see pretty frequently, and I have no idea within a range of about 25 years how old they are. Seriously, they could be 22, and they could be 42, and I really don't know. They could be anywhere in there, and I just cannot tell. And that's a flaw with my ability to perceive something about another person, but it says something. It says that checking someone out, lighting up that, is that a mate pattern, happens way before there's any sort of moral judgment call that can even come into play. And I think that's pretty interesting, and it informs some of the rest of the discussion, so I thought I would mention it. There you go. And so, when you see a woman in an anime, you're immediately going to sexualize her. Whether she's got big old titties, or she's built like a loli, or what, you're going to sexualize her. Because, and it helps that you've been sexualizing her for as long as you've been watching anime. And, you know, following artists on Danburu who sexualize anime characters, following artists on Twitter who sexualize fictional characters all the time, and, you know, following a couple dozen girls on OnlyFans who sexualize themselves, and following a bunch of people on Instagram where they all sexualize themselves. So your automatic is to sexualize somebody, and to think, ooh, it would be fun to fuck them, regardless of their age or whatever else is going on with them in the thing. I'm gonna do something dangerous now. Okay, here we go. Okay, yep. So it looks like I'm losing to some extent the admiration and support financially of somebody who's been here for forever. Somebody who's in my channel. I'm not going to name names or anything. It's not fair. That's sad. It comes down to something really simple. There's a book over here. The book on the bottom. There's a reason that it's on the bottom. I've got two books on my shelf here. You might notice that I've removed everything from this shelf, except for a couple things that I think are important. Those are my tea kettle and tea stuff, and two books. There's the only thing on my shelf here that's in frame now. Now, this water bottle ends up in frame because this is where I put it, and water is important. Why the tea? What does green tea mean to me? Green tea means that what you put into your body can change your mind. It's a fundamental of how I view the world. What about those two books? Well, the book on the top is Marcus Mato Mestre's Framed Ink. It indicates to me that through careful practice, one can shape art to affect the emotional interpretation of the reader. That is, one can express oneself through media. It can express truth through media that cannot be expressed through words or through other mediums. That's a fundamental to my viewpoint of the world. If it were not true, there would be no point in observing art, and there would be no point in creating. The second book that's there, and the one that's on the bottom of that, and I think is the more important one, is Maps of Meaning. It's a book about the idea that media can contain meaning, that stories are important. That is a fundamental of my belief. I believe that that is true, and I will not renounce that belief unless something better is proven to me. There's a bit of a problem there. There's an unfortunate problem. The problem is that Maps of Meaning, a book that I absolutely agree with, I don't think there is a single word in that book that I disagree with. It is written by a man named Jordan B. Peterson, who a lot of people hate. I mean, genuinely hate, and will not associate with, and will not associate with the ideas of, and will not associate with anyone who associates with the ideas of. He is effectively canceled to a huge portion of the populace. That's fucking scary. And so that makes this scary. I believe in what is written in that book. I am not some idiot fanboy. I am not some sycophant. I am reading the book. I have watched the lectures, and I agree with them. It has taken me years to incorporate even one fractional piece of the wisdom that is present in them, and there are bits and pieces of the wisdom that is in them that I reject and I disagree with. I am, strangely, capable of thinking for my own. And by owning this book or agreeing with its premises, I am not aligning myself in whole with a person. Nor am I aligning myself with the people who align themselves with that person, which is the bigger problem. That is not saying that I could not be a fool who is being manipulated by some greater system. I admit these possibilities, and I hope that you see, via my admission of these possibilities, that I am serious about this. This isn't done flippantly. This is important to me. It might not be important to you. There might be ideas that you disagree with in there, but I will not stand for people dismissing a thinker out of hand because they disagree with one or more of his thoughts. And I certainly will not stand for people dismissing me as a thinker, which I am, for agreeing with the thoughts of one person simply because they have a predisposed judgment against that person. Most people who are against Jordan B. Peterson have not watched or read or heard or learned anything from him except what they have heard third or fourth hand through biased media sources. This is true of almost everything in the modern era, so you need to be very careful about what you consume and whether you believe it. I think that the people who are against Jordan Peterson may not have their ideas together, because I currently, from my limited point of view, do not understand how you could disagree with those ideas, unless they were twisted when they were presented to you. But I admit that I am fallible, and I can only see one small piece. So, here's how dialogue and discourse works. I share a thing that I believe with you. You now have the opportunity to criticize me and criticize the thing. If there's something about Jordan Peterson that you think I don't know, that I probably should know before I make a judgment call about him, share it with me and try to convince me. I will be open to it. But I will warn you that I currently believe this, and again, I've spent a couple of years coming to the conclusion that I believe this, because I did not believe it at first. I thought it was stupid and wrong. And then I kept thinking about it, and it incepted its way into my brain, and the idea that's present in it feels correct to me, and it has changed the way that I structure my life. And as it has changed the way that I structure my life has become closer to the ideal that I want it to be. And that seems to be proof to me that the ideas that are present in the thing, when applied, work. So, disagreement is fine, but I will not let people demand or hold me hostage or hold their money hostage by saying that they will not support me if I believe in a thing or if I am honest about a thing, because that is the way to become worthless. Me to become worthless. That is the way to lie until I no longer exist. To compromise my values at every turn, at every point, until I'm just another milquetoast, washed up idiot making bland, uninteresting content with no opinion to it. I hope that's not what you want. If that is what you want, or if you're going to demand that I disassociate myself with from someone that I respect because you disagree with that person's premises, or more accurately, because you have heard that their premises are evil and should be disagreed with from someone you trust, because you've heard from, let's say, some more news who Jordan Peterson is, or you've watched ContraPoints, a thinker who I think is brilliant and wonderful and creates amazing videos, has her own video on Jordan Peterson and his premises, and sees it from her own perspective. I have watched those videos, and all of ContraPoint's videos. I like them a lot. My point is, I will not be silenced. I will not shut up about my truth. because I think it's not just my truth. I think it's a universal truth, and so I will share it. And in the sharing, I open myself up to vulnerability because I tell you what is true, what I really believe, and it might hurt me very immensely to do this. I might lose a couple $1,000s this month for doing this, like half my income. Fine. Very well. 3 years ago, I was starving, and I chose to follow my ideals. I will follow my ideals until I'm back starving. I don't mind. I really don't mind. It's really nice to live in a good place. It's really nice to eat good food. It's really nice to be able to purchase things that I need. It's really nice to not be afraid, but I would give it all up if the alternative was to lie to myself. Because I've spent too much of my life wasted lying to myself about what I believe and what I want and what I'm seeking. And the one of the only things that I have found that grants any meaning to this world is that book, Maps of Meaning. Seems like a reasonable supposition that a book, if it does what it says on the front and it provides a map of meaning, that it might be very valuable, that it might be useful. And I have found it to be such. The discussion goes on in the Discord. That's fine. I'm sorry for derailing this discussion, but it needs to happen somewhere, and this is the video that I'm recording today. That's just the nature of it. I'm sorry. This is my hardline stance. I'm going to take this stance. If you can provide me with information that makes me question my belief in that book, because it's not even a belief in a person. Jordan Peterson could go and start claiming that everybody should hump the sky as much as they can, and we should all wear panties on our heads and fuck each other with fists instead of penises. Like, he could do something insane, and it'd be like, okay, well, the guy's a fucking idiot, and that's crazy. But I'd still keep this book, because the thoughts that are in the book have nothing to do with the moral character of the person.
I might be scum, but I'm still a damn good mechanic, and you can take that to the bank. So don't go judging a man's skill by his character.
He could do something insane, and it'd be like, okay, well, the guy's a fucking idiot, and that's crazy. But I'd still keep this book, because the thoughts that are in the book have nothing to do with the moral character of the person. Who wrote them? It's like claiming that the fundamental institutions of our culture are corrupt because they were written by corrupt men. Duh. Like, of course. Yeah, I know that Jefferson and Franklin and others did bad things and lived in their world in the wrong way and did things that were effectively evil and unforgivable. They still wrote some of the most important documents of modern political theory. You cannot disregard one because of the character of the brilliant men and women who contributed to it. You cannot do that. If you do, you're a fool. And frankly, and I'm sorry to say this, I don't need you. I don't need you. If you're not willing to think, to really think, to put aside your prejudice and think, the way that I'm doing when I say and mean and believe that if you show me information that it will actually change my moral viewpoint on Jordan Peterson, then I will change my viewpoint. I expect you to be able to do the same. And if you've enjoyed my content over the past 2 years, any part of it, or any of my insights about how media is important, then guess what? You don't realize it, but you agree with Jordan Peterson. Sorry. Deal with that inconsistency. How can you agree with his ideas? I thought he was a bigot and a racist and a monster. Because I don't think he's a bigot, a racist, or a monster. I just had somebody in my Discord ask me straight up, so you don't think bigotry is evil? I've seen no evidence that Jordan B. Peterson is a bigot, except by the broadest, most fallacious definitions. Definitions so expansive that they include anyone, from my perspective. Definitions that I would not want to use in the world. I don't see it. Maybe I'm blind. Open my eyes. Show me the truth. I'm ready to parse it. I'm ready to have my mind changed. But I'm not ready to give up what I believe in just because you ask me to, or just because you demand it of me. Absolutely not. I am what I am, and you can never take that away from me.
Confiscate her scissor blade.
Ma'am! No way! You'll never take this away from me! Never!